Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Angelo Depaola of the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty and Sportsman's Marine, the first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. All right, y'all, I'm Captain Patrick Garmeson. I'm filling in for Butch Theory, who's gallivanting down in Orlando, iCast this week, him and brother Joe down there. And I got Dylan Kiene as my co-host. How you doing, Kiene? How you doing, Dylan?
Doing real good, man. How are you?
Doing well, man. Kind of getting over the rodeo hangover, getting back into the swing of things. How about you?
I'm still not recovered from the rodeo, man. It's a crazy year from everything. I mean, participation was probably as high as I've seen it since COVID in 2020. And really exciting, really just a great year overall for a bunch of different species. So we can talk about all that in just a little bit. Really excited for the show today, man. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show. We've got some good offshore and onshore reports coming. Me and you will chat it up about the inshore and nearshore stuff. But before we jump in the reports, we've got a really cool opportunity for you. We have partnered with AFCO, and they're offering all of our listeners 10% off AFCO products. All you have to do to get your 10% off is text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 to subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. We have a great Alabama saltwater fishing report lined up. Let's hear who's making this week's show possible.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Sportsman's Marine. Sportsman's Marine has an extensive tackle selection of anything that local anglers need for saltwater and freshwater fishing, as well as boating accessories. They have the largest selection of the slick lure in Mobile and Baldwin County. They have AFCO, pelagic, and saltwater fanatics apparel along with other local brands. Go check out their Edgewater, Wellcraft, and Vexus lines of boats. They offer engine services with 5-star Yamaha and Mercury mechanics. Also, if you're looking for a street-legal electric golf cart, go check out their Atric golf carts. Sportsman's Marine on Highway 98, and they also have a downtown location next to Mr. Jean's Beans in Fairhope, Alabama. And also brought to you by Bahio Sunglasses. Want to catch more fish? Experience the clearest lenses on the planet with Bahio sunglasses. Because you'll see more, you'll catch more. It's as simple as that. Try on a pair at your local retailer or check out BahioSunglasses.com to witness the magic for yourself. Bahio is an independent, sustainable, carbon-neutral sunglass company based in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Experience the clearest lenses on the planet with Bahio sunglasses. Try on a pair at your local retailer or check out BahioSunglasses.com to see for yourself. And also by Hilton's Offshore Charts. Hilton's Offshore Charts. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. Make the choice that professional captains all over the Gulf make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com.
So let's get into this offshore report. Who we got bringing our offshore report to us, Dylan?
We got Captain King Marchand on the lady end with Captain Mike's deep sea fishing. Really great captain. I've gotten to fish with King a lot, but not since he's become a captain. So I'm really, really excited to get him on here. I think he had a really good rodeo. I really love the way King fishes and the way they operate on the lady end. So let's get into it.
What's up, King? How you doing, man?
What's going on, guys?
Shoot, just waiting to hear these offshore goodies from you, man. Bring it on.
Oh, man, we got some good ones, and it was one hell of a weekend for sure. Man, for me, it was just a total headache to start with. I had some engine troubles. We were down there working on some engines and trying to get things together. Finally, I had intentions on leaving Thursday afternoon around 4 o'clock and going out and catching a little bit of bait and then running on down there about 120 miles to go start out tuna fishing, marlin fishing, and all that. But I got set back kind of late. We didn't leave until after sunset. We didn't get a chance to catch bait. And so we just were kind of going out there without the real tools in the bag that we needed. But it all worked out anyway. It all worked out. Cool. Caught a bunch of pretty fish.
Go ahead and walk us through how you rebounded on, not being able to get out there and get your bait and everything.
Man, so I had to actually buy some croakers, which to me is not the most ideal bait for way offshore, but that's all I had at the time. So I got out there with lines couldn't be in the water till 5 in the morning. So we started out, I got there at 6 to where I needed to go to. I went, like I said, about 120 miles. and got there at 6 a.m. and just started out trolling for some tunas and some marlin and all that. And right out of the rip, we had a big blue marlin come up and just crushed one of our baits. We fought him for 3-4 minutes. He just got off the line. And just the whole fishing was just good, man. Everywhere I went to was just fishy. A lot of bait and bonitas and blackfin on top, a bunch of big fish up under them, knocking them up. It was just one of them trips to where everywhere I went to, it seemed like you couldn't really do nothing wrong, you know? But I guess jumping ahead, the highlight of the trip was the big blue marlin that we caught. We caught probably the biggest fish I've ever laid eyes on. And I've seen a good many of these marlin. And it was midday. We were trolling around a big drill ship, and just out of nowhere, man, that fish hit and almost spooled the whole reel. The marlin was so big that when he was jumping out of the water, he couldn't even get half of his body out of the water. It had to have been close to 600-700 pounds. He was over 600 pounds. And we fought that fish.
Gosh, that's so cool.
Fought him for 6 hours, man.
Oh.
Got him to the leader 3 times and had to let go because he was still green after that long. He was still kicking and fighting. And at first, when he hit, I said, okay, he's probably 300, 400, 500 pounds. But, he's not a monster, but he's a real good fish. And then when he got to the boat, I was like, oh my God, we need to sink a gas in this fish and get him in here because he's just that big. And like I said, man, we fought him for the guy who was the leader, had to let him go. And then finally, my guy who was fighting the fish, he was just done. I mean, he was, after staying up for 6 hours fighting that joker, he gave it his all. And I told my guy on the wire, I said, man, when he gets up, just hold him as hard as you can. I don't care if we break him off or whatever, just hold him. And he went to hold him. He put the line on the side of the boat to hold it even tighter, and it straightened the hook on that marlin. And he got it. Well, we got the points for it. It was still a catch and release, so it wasn't a lost fish. So it was still a caught fish, but it wasn't a fish that we got to bring back into the boat, So which is probably the best that we let him live and see another day. So it all worked out, really.
That's awesome, man. I couldn't only imagine. And, one of the things I've always admired about fishing with you, King, is just your ability to make adjustments on the fly and really thrive under pressure and put fish in the boat, no matter what the conditions are. You spend a lot of time out there. You realize that things change day to day and the fish don't always want the same thing or the same presentation or the same approach. So kind of walk us through a little bit, just your mindset heading into a tournament like the Alabama Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo. Something super competitive. I think, you fish with kind of the same people every year and you want to really perform for them too. So just kind of walk us through that mindset that you come to the table with. Yeah.
So my mindset is that I feel like I know how to catch the fish. I feel like I do anyways. And so when I'm going out there, I'm trying to do 2 things. I'm trying to get into the pretty water where I think the fish are at and the bait are at. But I'm also, especially with the rodeo, I'm trying to get away from all the traffic. And for me, the only way to get away from all that traffic is to just go a little bit further. Usually I would stop at the closer end rigs. We call it the ghetto, the Ram Powell, the beer cannonball, and all that kind of stuff. But I said, man, I ain't going to stop there because I know there's going to be 20, 30 boats. So it just makes it harder for me to do what I'm trying to do. And so, I looked at my Hilton's report. I seen where the pretty water was at. I saw where there seemed to be a little line of green and blue water pushing together. And I kind of concentrated my time around that area. Now, and you all know how it goes. It changes every single day and every single hour it changes. But I had a good idea of where I wanted to go and how I wanted to fish, and I just stuck to my game plan. And I got lucky. When I went there, the water was really pretty. The bait was there. There were tunas jumping. It was really just a picture-perfect scenario, It was thunderstorming the whole way out. I was nervous about that. But when we finally got to where we were going, it just came alive, man. And like I said, first thing in the morning, we hooked a blue marlin. We were chunking and live baiting and troll. We did everything, every tool I have in the shelf. We were pulling it out. And right off the bat that morning, we also hooked a really nice tuna. It was 90 pounds maybe, but he was able to win us a little bit of money in the Calcutta. But yeah, just getting in a good area and just getting started is what I try to do. And then once you get started, you can see where the currents are doing and see what the fish are kind of eating right there, and you can take that and progress throughout the rest of your trip. Nice. In this specific trip, man, we had so many firsts. The biggest blue marlin I ever seen, and also I was out there just way out in the middle of open water, and I saw a big school of butts coming up, probably about 2 miles away. I said, man, I'm going to go check that out. Rode over there to it, and it was a giant school. I've never seen this before. A giant school of nothing but 150 all the way up to 200-pound tunas busting some bait right next to a piece of grass that wasn't as big as I am. And I I trolled through it. They didn't eat the bait. And I noticed they were knocking up hardtails and they were knocking up blackfin. And these fish were eating whole blackfin. I mean, they were big tunas. I trolled through it, didn't get a bite, threw a popper in it, caught a little tiny blackfin. And I said, okay, we had some big hardtails in the live well. We're going to back up to them and just chunk them over the side of the boat. And son, as soon as that hardtail hit the water, about a 160 came up and skied on it, not 5 foot from the back of the boat. And we wound up, just had back up, man. We hooked 7 fish, all of them over 140 pounds, and lost every single one of them. Pulled the hooks, broke the line.
Oh, man.
The good Lord blessed us with one opportunity, and it just didn't come together, man. It just didn't.
It'd be like that sometimes.
Man,
that's some really great information there. You know, sometimes they want the real deal, that live hardtail. That's what they were keyed in on, or the tuna, if you had a blackfin or, you know, or hardtail. I mean, whatever. That's just really good information, man. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, and just to be able to see something like that, you know, for me, I go out there every day, and for me, I would pay to go see that, man. That was a trip of a lifetime.
Well, King, do you like, I felt like fishing for me, my wife and I, we fished from the causeway all the way out into the Gulf. And it just felt like on Friday that just fish were biting. It just felt like in most places that we stopped, there was activity from all different types of species. And then it seemed to kind of progressively get a little bit tougher as the weekend went on. And most of the time we blame that. We say, oh, well, it's just the rodeo and all the pressure, especially with me being in the Bay or Mississippi Sound or something like that. But did y'all see any change in the fishing, like as it progressed through the weekend, or did it hold up and stay in pretty good shape for you the whole time?
You know, it's funny you say that, Patrick, because I hadn't even thought about it. That's exactly what happened. It was good that first day, and probably, what was it, the next Saturday, Sunday. No, Saturday. Yes, Saturday. I was working my way back in because I was going to grouper fish Sunday morning. That was my plan. We're stopping grouper fish, then we were going to ride back in to go weigh in our fish. And I hit 5 different oil rigs, all of them, you know, from 120 miles all the way back up to about 90 miles. And I never marked a fish at any rig, never saw a fish. It just went completely dead. Like something, I don't know what happened. The water was still pretty, but it was like a switch went off and the fish were just gone, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's funny you say that, because I know the offshore and the inshore is probably 2 different things, but for me, I totally experienced that. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I always like to hear, you know, sometimes I use the phrase misery loves company, but it is sometimes true where you like to hear when other people experience the same things. We don't have the answers as to what happened, but it is neat to make the comparisons. And one of the things that I've noticed in the Bay, and I even saw this today, we were just out in the middle of open water, reeling in a jack crevalle, and the jack is coming to the surface and it pukes up some bait fish or whatever. And within seconds, there's like 15 big fat glass minnows swimming around eating what the jack just threw up. And it's like, where did these glass minnows just appear out of nowhere? So, you know, if there's that kind of life in Mobile Bay, just anywhere, the fish don't have to like key in on very high flow areas or whatever is my opinion. And that may be what contributes to some of this downturn in the fishing quality. You see some of that in the offshore where just all of a sudden just everything is just bait everywhere and just life everywhere, but maybe just so spread out that the bite gets tough.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me. I'm not just trying to agree with you either, but that's exactly what happened to me Saturday morning. I pulled up. I was at a rig or a drill ship. I can't remember which one I was at. And that morning, I thought we were going to be on fire. The tunas were jumping left and right. I tried chunking for them. I tried live baiting for them. I put the kite up for them. I trolled for them. I did everything that I could do to catch these fish. They didn't want anything that we had. When we did catch one, but when he came on the deck, he spit up a bunch of little tiny minnows that was no bigger, probably half the size of your pinky. Mm-hmm. And the water was so full of bait, but that they wanted one thing. They didn't want anything that I had. And I don't have, you know, the small enough hooks and small enough leader to fish with a fish that big, or else I would.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I've had that happen before too, where tuners are jumping all around you and you just can't get one hooked because they don't want what you have. And like, turns out, everybody always uses the phrase, "Oh, big bait, big fish." That's not true. Elephants eat peanuts, and that's exactly what these big tuners wanted, was little tiny bait fish.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I did a charter in Alaska a couple of years ago for halibut, and I had these salmon heads from some salmon I caught the year before, and I'd always heard, big salmon use the whole body, you catch big halibut. So I brought them with me. And the guy was like, "Man, you're more than welcome to try them, but I promise you, elephants eat peanuts, and we'll probably catch our biggest fish today on these little tiny herring." Sure enough, that's what the 100-pounders were eating. They didn't want anything to do with the salmon heads. And I've seen that effect too, where these guys were talking about, where it's almost like there's too much natural food for them, too much bait, and it's hard to get them to bite anything. It's not that.
Yeah. And even by using a really big bait, you kind of cancel out your chances at catching some of the smaller fish, which are still good to catch. I mean, it depends on what you're targeting too,
That's right. Well, King, you been doing any bottom bumping or anything like that? You said you kind of worked your way back in during the rodeo. Between there and maybe early this week, have you been able to do anything like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did a bunch of grouper fishing, caught a bunch of big white snappers and beeliners. My box was not looking so great by the end of the trip. We had a bunch of nice tunas and, this and that and the other, but it wasn't the quality of a fish box that I wanted to see. And we pretty much slammed that sucker shut in about 3 hours of bottom fishing. It was just on. I went to an area where I've been catching a bunch of scamp, like 25, close to 30 scamp every single time I go there. And that area, I've called it an area, probably a mile by a mile. I bumped it and caught one or two, and it was just dead. And I said, okay, man, we got to change up. We got to go closer in. We got to move. Something's got to happen. So I went and I found this little tiny ridge that it probably sticks up 3 foot off the bottom, but it runs for miles. And I said, all right, we're going to try this and see what happens. I was marking a lot of fish on it. We dropped down and we caught a red grouper and then another red grouper. I had some guys beeliner fishing too, and they were bringing up white snapper, beeliner, 3 at a time, And it's funny, just by moving a mile or two, the bite was totally different. I think we changed. It was 260 foot while I was fishing. It turned out to be about 220 when I ended up at this little spot. And the reason I fished it is because the ridge was running east and west. And my holdup, the way I had to keep the boat in one spot, I had to hold it due east. I was able to slowly bump down that ridge. I'm talking like 10 foot every 5 minutes, just slowly working it. And we were just killing fish. We wound up with, I think, 15 groupers, scamps and red grouper within a couple of hours of fishing. I mean, it was just, and I only had 3 grouper rods out. It was just incredible. It was really, really good. And so we would fill up the fish box. And everybody had plenty to eat. Caught our 2 days limit of red snapper while we were doing that. It was just good bottom fishing. It was awesome.
Dude, that's it's awesome. And that's a pretty solid tip for someone that's trying to make a drift out there, is to, man, if you look at that chart and find one that's running the same line as your drift, man, you can't get a better situation than that. I do that a lot inshore using the wind to my advantage, where I have like a shoreline that I want to drift, and I'll look sometimes I'll just stop and look on my map or on the GPS and just try to say, all right, this shoreline, pick out 3 or 4 shorelines that are going to set up perfect on a wind that may actually keep some people at the house. They may be like, man, I'm not going out there in that 25-mile-an-hour wind. But then I find the right shoreline that sets up well on that drift, and man, you take that and work it to your advantage. And it sounds like you did that on using that current on that right ridge.
Yeah, and that's, to me, I think that's what makes a good fisherman, is taking the disadvantages to most people and using them to your advantage. Things that people don't think about. Sometimes when the current's rolling really hard, it makes it hard for us to fish. I use that in order to be able to hold up on a spot and slowly work against it, so that we can cover ground as we're fishing on the bottom, And just like you said with the wind, when I group fish, every time I go out there, I look at what way the boat's going to drift. I work against that drift so that I can work an area to the best of my abilities. Because, some of these areas, they may be miles long, but they're not 20 foot wide. Some of these ridges and ledges that I'm fishing, and just, through the experience of just doing it, you figure out what works for you. And it may be different with other people. I'm not saying that's the way you need to do it every single time, but it works for us a lot.
Absolutely. That's a great report, King. I appreciate you coming on and joining us. I know you got some some business to tend to on the boat. And if folks want to get up with you and book a trip, how do they do that?
Man, they can call that phone number, 251-861-5302, or they can look me up online, capmikeonline.com, and you can see my schedule right from there and book a trip.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, King.
Oh, yeah, nice. Y'all too, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, Dylan, that was a great report from King. We're going to take a quick break and hear from this week's sponsors.
That segment was brought to you by Test Calibration. If your diesel has low power or is consuming excessive amounts of fuel, these are common signs that your turbocharger may need to be rebuilt. Don't waste your money online with the cheapest options where you get no support after the sale. Test Calibration has been selling and servicing diesel, turbochargers, and fuel injection systems since 1976. No matter if you're running a diesel in your boat, tractor, or truck, Test Calibration can help you. Contact them at 800-822-0057 or visit them online at testcalibrationdieselandturbo.com. And also brought to you by Fishbites. Whether you are hitting the sand with set rigs using the traditional scent strips for pompano or fishing the flats or marshes for speckled trout, redfish, and flounder, Fishbites has something for you. Family owned and operated in St. Augustine, Florida, they pride themselves on making reliably consistent fishing products for anglers of all ages around the world. Fishbites baits and lures are made with pride in the Sunshine State of the USA. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits at fishbites.com.
Yep, that was cool talk about the rodeo and having the luck of finding something as like he said, just this tiny patch of grass just loaded with tuna jumping out of the water, and then also having the biggest blue marlin he's ever seen happen on rodeo weekend. Man, there's some special things that happen on rodeo weekends for most anglers. You know, I tournament fish a lot, and we always say that regardless of what the conditions are and what's the amount of competition out there and all the adversity that can be up against you in a fishing tournament, someone's always going to bring in the fish. You know, there's always going to be that big fish that hits the dock. There's always going to be the right fish to win the tournament. This year was no different. I mean, there were some monster fish brought in. The shark category was really cool that they brought back and had some really big tigers. But our next guest is very, very close to me, near and dear to my heart. My mom, Vicki Foster, who is this year's Alabama Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo Master Angler. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, we're doing well. Cooper's still carrying his trophy around, bragging about how he has the master angler from the junior rodeo, and I don't have any trophies the same size as his. So are you doing the same thing to Mike at your house?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He keeps milling through all my prizes over here. He's been doing it since he got home. Like a kid in a candy store. He's like, ooh, just trying out all my reels and everything else.
Well, tell the listeners about the biggest catch of the two fish that put you in the master angler was the big ling or cobia, whatever you want to call it. So tell us a little bit about how that went down.
Well, we started out trout fishing and we caught a couple of trout and we're down by Fort Morgan and we said everything looked good. We checked the radar and headed out to our usual spot and got out there, and Mike happened to find a spot that we hadn't fished before by using the Lowrance. And so we stopped there and started fishing, but we were just dropping down for snapper. And all of a sudden the one rod behind me that Mike had put in the rod holder was like doubled over, and I went to go try to get it out of the rod holder and it snapped the rod off. But luckily I had a hold of it, so we didn't lose it. And then he fished with it again and it snapped the top part off. So all we had left was the reel. Everything else was gone. And then so we still kept fishing and trying to catch some snapper. And I think Jeff might have brought in a fish or two. And then all of a sudden it just took off and I was fighting that fish. I was halfway in the water and falling down and everything else. And they're trying to help me get back up. And then all of a sudden the rod snapped in half and all I had left was one eye left on the rod. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So we just kept working it. Mike kept watching me. It's like, just take it slow, take it easy. And we finally got it up and he kept saying it was a shark. He kept saying the tax man, but he said the shark. And when he got it up far enough that we could see it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, it's a ling. It's not a shark. It's a ling." He said, "It's huge." And that's about the time I saw it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So then we really had to watch what we were doing because we really thought it was a shark. So when we found out it wasn't, we had to get it all the way up, and then finally got it up there. And him and Jeff got 2 gaffs and gaffed it and brought it in the boat, and it just kind of laid there. And I guess it was as tired as I was. It was definitely the biggest fight I've ever had, even bigger than that wahoo I caught last year. The fight was just tremendous. I never fought a fish that big and that hard. It was crazy. So I don't know if there was a school of ling down there, if it was just one ling wreaking havoc on all of our tackle.
So the first rod was broken, but the fish wasn't landed. Then you hook this one and you start breaking rods. So yeah, you were in a pretty good solid fish, or Mike needs to upgrade his tackle, one of the two. I don't know what is there.
Well, we definitely have some upgraded tackles since I won Master and won first place for that ling. So we definitely have some upgraded tackle, thanks to the Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo, because their prizes are just tremendous. It's awesome.
So the cobia, y'all just had a line down deep, just trying to drop down for snapper. It wasn't like you saw the fish or saw some marks on the fish finder to have any particular zone you were trying to hone in on. You just were.
Nope, it was just a snapper fishing day and turned into a ling catching day.
Nice. So what all happened the rest of the weekend? Tell us about because you can't win Master Angler with just one awesome fish that broke all your rods. You gotta at least catch another one, I would think.
Yes, I did. Well, Saturday I didn't hardly catch a fish Saturday. We went back out offshore. We did the trout thing again, and Jeff caught us trout to get him in the jackpot. And then we headed back offshore, did some trolling, didn't do much with that, snapper fish. And then we came into the rigs and caught a couple of nice Spanish, some lower 4-pound Spanish, and I didn't really catch much anything that whole day. I caught a few baby snapper, and then Sunday we went back out, and we were having a little bit of boat trouble on the end of the day Saturday, so we came back, tried taking the Triton out, and I told Mike I wanted to go down and fish towards Bon Secure because we always seem to have pretty good luck down that way, and caught a little puppy drum. I saw them tailing, and I love to try and catch them. And I threw a shrimp out there and caught that. And then we were coming back down, and it was about the same place that I caught the drum. And it kind of came up, busted up top, and then went down deep and headed towards out into the middle. So I just thought that's what the drum did, except for coming up the bust at the top. So I got around the back side of the boat with it, and Mike brought the net and pulled it up, and it was that beautiful speckled trout and it was just fat and healthy and just right within the slot. It was beautiful. Couldn't have been a better fish.
So I had the luxury of having a second place fish last year in the rodeo, a speckled trout. It was over 4 pounds, and I knew the second I saw it, I was like, if this thing measures, it's going to win or be really close to winning. Did you feel the same way the first time you saw it?
I didn't, but Mike did. He knows better about that than I do. He looked at it, he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a beautiful fish." He said, "This is your fish." And so we got it out and we measured it, and it was close. And we tried on 2 different check-it sticks that we had, and it's like, well, is it going to make it? Well, we just have to take it in and see. So we took it in, and it made it easily. It was close, but it wasn't like that close. So we had a little wiggle room with it too. So, but Mike knew when he pulled it up. He said, if it's not a winner, he said, I don't know what it is. He said, as long as it measures, we're good. So yeah, it was. When I saw it, it was like, it was a beautiful fish, fat and healthy and nice speckled trout.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of variability, and that 21 to 22 inch trout can vary on as much as a pound or more difference for those fish. So it's always really, really special when you get that one that's 4 or more and get to see that fish. You kind of already know immediately that it's a special fish. So that's really, really awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell us how does it feel like when you get told that you won the Master Angler? Like, I know Cooper, I don't know that his feet were touching the ground for a little while after he found out he won Master Angler for the kids rodeo.
Pretty much the same with me. Mike kept saying you had to open up both doors on the house. He said, good thing we had French doors so I could get my head through it. But yeah, definitely that feet off the ground. Definitely. So I never in a million years thought I'd win a Master Angler for the DC Fishing Rodeo with all the competition and everything out there, and just all the other years that we fished. And, you know, it was enough to get a third place fish, let alone 2 first place fish and a Master Angler. And then to do it actually the same rodeo that my grandson did, that made it even more special. So I thought that was even more special with Cooper winning it first and then me winning after him. So that's awesome.
Well, we all love it that it all happened this way. I mean, I was shooting for it, but then as soon as I saw you were in contention, it was made all of my drive like just focused on, man, I just hopefully everything will hold up and you'll be able to get it, and it worked out. So very proud of you.
Well, thank you. Proud of Cooper too. So we got a proud family right now for the 89th rodeo. So it's pretty awesome.
To win Master Angler with what, first place ling, and what was the placement on the trout?
First
place trout as well. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, not to mention the speckled trout jackpot paid out $10,000, so she got all the goodies plus the highest paying jackpot out of the rodeo. So
yeah, I was looking over those on the final day, and man, the trout was over 10K, the snapper was over 10K, first place king was like 7 or 8K. I mean, it was a lot of incentive to be out there fishing, and you know you're fishing against the best of the best.
That's right. The shark was 12,000. I said this jackpot for the trout was the highest, but no, I think the shark was the highest. But yeah, it's a lot of cash on the line for sure. Well, Mama, I appreciate you taking time to tell everybody your story about the Master Angler run you had.
No problem. I just kind of lucked into it, so it takes some luck and it takes some skills, I guess, but a lot of luck. For sure.
Yeah, well, it certainly does, but it's also about just staying hard at it too. I mean, y'all fished hard and you were out there and put a lot of time and effort in. I mean, y'all starting to really understand kind of where you need to be, when you need to be there, and put yourself in position. So it's, you know, granted, anybody could have pulled up to any one of those spots and accidentally caught a fish equally the same way, but you know, y'all went to the spots where y'all did with a purpose, and that's really what it takes. I mean, there's always luck involved. I mean, everybody that goes fishing, anybody that catches that big fish or whatever, there's always some level of luck. But to make it all happen is got to have a little bit of skill and just some experience as well. So it shows that
to land that cobia to land that cobia on broken rod takes some skill for sure.
Yeah, team effort too.
Yep, I couldn't have done any of it without my captain. So he's the one that pretty much keeps me going. So, and then luckily we had Jeff on the boat to help pull that bad boy in the boat. So, but we definitely had a great weekend. It was just an awesome weekend with the weather, considering what the weather forecast was earlier in the week, and just turned out to be a beautiful weekend. So all around catching fish and the weather too. So
absolutely. Well, as we say on the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, appreciate you joining us, and keep whacking them.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, Dylan. Well, I'm a proud son, and I get to be a proud father and captain with my son winning the Master Angler too. So I'm kind of glowing all over the place because of this. It's been a pretty special couple of weeks for us around here. But man, you know, the rodeo touches so many people in so many ways, from the science aspect to the people going out, and heck, a 15-year-old won the contender in the contender draw.
Yeah.
And man, just so many cool things happen with the rodeo. And those that don't participate, I think, can't fully grasp it. Once you immerse yourself in a full weekend of the rodeo, you being in part on the science side of things, me as a fisherman, I've actually been a part of the JCs and helping put the rodeo on for a couple of years. Man, it's just incredible to be involved in all of that. Now that it's over, it's it's over. So it's all over about the crying, and then those guys from the JCs, they'll be hitting the drawing board. I think they take a couple of maybe 2 months off, and then man, they start planning again for next year. It's like about a 10-month process for those guys. So what are some cool things that you may have seen at the rodeo this year?
Well, I mean, it's like you just said, there's so many different sides to the rodeo, right? There's the science side where we get a really unique opportunity to sample the fisheries on a scale that is just not possible on a day-to-day basis. And then you got the fisherman side of things, the camaraderie that goes on there where people come together and they put everything they have into fishing for 3 straight days to try to come out on top, and you're chasing big money. That's really exciting. And then, you got the JC side of it. They put a lot of work in to make that event go on there at the rodeo site. And then this year, to me, was just really special. I really love the rodeo because I feel like it's a direct reflection of the fishery, the current status of it at the time. And this year was no different. It seemed like I think this is the most flounder I've ever seen weighed in. I think I got over 100 southern flounder come in, including one really nice, the 6.5 pounder that took first place. That was a really beautiful fish. Speckled trout, same thing. A lot of really nice speckled trout. Red snapper seemed to be a really, really nice one as well. A lot of 20 plus pound fish getting up to, I think, 27 or so probably took first place. Another really cool one to see a lot of was the swordfish. I think it was, 12 or 13, maybe a little more than that, swordfish that came in. Some really nice tunas, the sharks, obviously. We had Dr. Marcus Dryman on site there, who's one of the best shark scientists in the world. It was a really great opportunity for him to get some really good samples from really large sharks that can be used in stock assessments and stuff like that. And so, just really great. I know I'd love to hear your side of it going into the tournament. Obviously, you guided Cooper to a win as the master angler in the junior rodeo, and then getting to fish all weekend at the big rodeo. So
yeah, 2 weekends, an absolute blast for me. So with Cooper's tournament, I kind of had the mindset of I looked at the board and I had an idea of, a place to be able to target probably about 7 different species, from redfish, speckled trout, sheephead. I think the week leading up to the kids rodeo, I had landed on some pretty good sized bonita that were around 15 pounds. I felt like could put us into contenders there, and big Spanish mackerel. So I was like, when I put him on the boat, I was like, man, we're going hard, and we're going to see if what we can come up with. And there were a couple areas where we spent a little extra time doing things that maybe burnt some time up for us to be able to explore some of the stuff out in the Gulf. We ended up staying all in the bay. But like the cool thing was his big ladyfish came, which was one of the places, or one of the fish that he had placed was the first place ladyfish. It actually came right in an area where I was expecting to catch redfish. We were red fishing with popping corks and live shrimp. He caught one ladyfish, a little over 2 pounds. And then shortly thereafter, actually, while we were taking picture of the one that was over 2 pounds, he had a rod out with a shrimp on it, and that rod got hit. The ladyfish is jumping out of the water. I was like, man, give me that fish. Let me put it on ice. But you need to get that one. And he got that one in, and that one ended up being the one he got for first place. So that was the incidental, but it was in a spot where we should be catching some nice quality fish, was what I expected. And then the ladyfish showed up. We ended up not putting a redfish in the boat there, but we did put a couple in the boat in other areas. And then I knew where I needed to fish for some sheephead, and we put some time in there, and he caught, I think, 3 or 4 sheephead, and they kind of progressively got bigger, and then they started getting a little smaller. And we saw what time it was, so we're like, all right, let's go with this, because at the time it was the biggest one that would have been on the board. And then we just kept moving. But I had a plan as far as being a guide and being a captain for my son. as to how we were going to be able to execute as many fish as possible and try to put them in position. And I wasn't thinking master angler. I was thinking more of like just trying to help the kid, get 2 or 3 plaques or whatever. And then he ends up winning master angler. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for him. He seemed like he was over the moon.
Oh, yeah.
When they announced that.
He was fired up for sure. Well, man, let's shift our talk a little bit and bring in Mr. Tanner Deas and get a little onshore fishing report. What's up, dude?
What's up, Cap? How you doing?
We're doing well around my house. How about you?
Hanging in there, doing what we can, making a little dinner tonight, getting ready for the evening.
Well, man, give us a rundown. We've been talking a lot of rodeo on this show, kind of recapping that because so far all of our contributors were involved in the rodeo, and I saw your name pop up on the leaderboard a couple times. So tell us what you did and kind of walk us through that, and maybe if you've done anything so far this week.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I I did do some fishing at the rodeo. Me and Brandon Collier, old Captain Collier, got together and did some fishing on his boat with his dad and one of his buddies named Cody, and really tried to attack the live speckled trout category, and struggled to find school-sized trout. We really fished hard all 3 days for live speckled trout, and ended up catching a lot of overs. The bite was pretty slow, but when we did get bit, it was really quality, which is awesome to hear and awesome to say. I've never had the problem of catching too big a fish, but with the tournament slot that we were looking for, here we are. We were catching a bunch of over 22s, and I think the smallest fish we brought in was a little over 22 and a half, or the smallest over slot fish that we brought in was 22 and a half, and the biggest was 25 and 7/8, so right under 26, a big lunker there. And we just got stuck with this weird space that we were just crushing the fish and having quality fish eat our croakers. And it was a really good time throwing live baits out there, something I don't really do often. And Brandon definitely caught way more fish than me and had a better live bait feel than I did, but got on some really quality fish and did find a few school trout while we were out there, but really struggled to get on a hot speckled trout bite. Oftentimes it got taken over by white trout, or Jack Crevalle popped up on the last day. And man, we really attacked it. Friday and Saturday, we spent all of our time doing that. And then we theorized that because the bite was so slow, maybe we should fish the full moon and fish at night. And Saturday night, we woke up at 10 p.m. and pretty much repeated the same patterns or similar areas that we'd been fishing during the daytime, and throwing live croakers still and some artificials as well. And did get on some fish, quality fish. Once again, the same issue. We caught a bunch of oversized trout, and we did get 121 that was tagged. Old Dylan sent me the information on that today. I thought that was really cool. Seemed like the trout had been hanging out in the bay for a little over a year and a week. That was really cool. And got on a couple of redfish at night out there in the bay, and just really couldn't piece together the live bait trout like we were searching for, and did catch a lot of fish through the weekend, but didn't do much with the tournament standings. And I did get third place white trout on a whim right there the second night, but knew that wasn't going to hold because, somebody's going to bring in a stud from offshore.
You've been putting your feet in the sand anywhere, or walking or doing any wading or anything?
Yeah, man, I've been doing some land-based fishing. My past recent trips here, I did some flounder pounding and did some speckled trout fishing in the rain. I had some success. I went down to the island a couple of days ago, and it was raining its tail off. This was right before the rodeo, and it was raining its tail off, and I sat there, and lightning was popping, and I had made the drive, and I was like, well, I'm just going to sit here for a minute. So I sat around until the lightning gave way, and once it did, I got out there on the east end jetties and started throwing some top waters, and had a bunch of big blow-ups and a lot of action, and I had two really sizable speckled trout follow the topwater all the way back to the rocks, just blowing up on it. Must have been 3, 4, 5 times a piece. Swam all the way up to the rocks where I could see them, and then just never connected, and ended up catching a 16, 17-inch male right there, male trout, and flounder pounding before I left the area, and didn't have much more success, and got in light drizzle pretty much the whole morning, so got soaking wet, but still got a fish or two, and flounder pounded on my way out on the north side of the island and picked up a fish over there. Thought that was really cool. And then later that afternoon, I went out to Dog River with a buddy and did the same thing, just kind of did some flounder fishing and throwing around the Fishbites. You know, those eye strike fishing jig heads that they have that avoid the hang-ups. I was throwing those as well and bounced those around a bunch of rocks and structure and ended up coming up on some nice flounder and some small ones too, 15, 14, and a 10-incher. So nothing really big or anything, but cool to snag some fish to end the day. And that was my last time on the land before the rodeo. And then did one other trip that wasn't quite as successful down here recently. Through some top waters and just didn't have much success fishing on the north side of the island and top waters and twitch baits and working in areas with tons and tons of bait and, you know, tons and tons of life around us, but just wasn't able to connect with any fish or find them. And sometimes you just got to get after them and they're not cooperating. So it's just how it goes, ain't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have when you have just kind of limited areas that you're fishing, and a lot of the areas that you're talking about fishing, I always feel like are more water level dependent. And up until just probably today, I saw kind of where the water is a little bit higher in the morning. So maybe some of those areas will fire up and get going for you this week as that, you know, we have these high tides in the morning.
Yeah, man, a lot of those spaces that I do fish, I consider them to be tidal-based, or that's what I think about it in my head. A lot of times I want them to be a high tide, unless I'm fishing like right on the beach or in an area where I know the deeper water is at. I prefer to fish a lot of those spots in the higher tide, just like you're saying.
I got a question about the fish bite. So I use some of the Fight Club lures, and I've noticed that, so like in a boat, there's times where I may hook a fish bite lure on there, throw it around a few times, and then we may move 2 or 3 spots. And then I don't have, you know, maybe I haven't used the lure in a couple of casts or a couple of stops. I've been taking care of customers or whatever. And that lure starts to harden up a little bit, starts to dry up a little bit. Are you using yours enough to where you're always keeping it wet and it's always staying soft and pliable, or do you take it off, or how are you tending to your fish bite lures?
I know what you're talking about. There does come a time and you know, once it's been on there and kind of quote unquote drying out or in the air for so long, it does harden up and sort of lose some of its action as well as some of its size. But a lot of times mine is in the water, you know, bouncing around spots and stuff. I noticed that as long as it's about 2 hours or 3 hours, you're pretty good. Anything less than that or more than that, typically it dries out pretty bad. And I'm sure right now in this beating sun, that time may be even a little less. But like once I get home or once I'm getting done with the fishing trip, maybe even before I make the ride in, a lot of times I will cut them off and put them back in the package. That way next time I'm coming to use them, it's just not a wasted lure.
Okay.
They are really great lures and they're really quality and they catch a lot of fish, but they do dry out just like, you know, other similar brands on the market that stink and that pliable plastic that they use. Once that sun hits it and it gets dry for so long, it'll get stuck on your hook. You might have to like cut it off.
Yep.
I've had to yank on it with some pliers a few times.
Razor blade that joker.
What's up, Dylan? You been catching any flounder over there? I hear your voice. You been throwing any fish bites or anything?
Not this week. I haven't, you know, I'm just coming off the rodeo, finally getting my feet back under me, hoping that I can maybe get out later this week and throw around for them. But yeah, I mean, that Fishbites Fight Club is something serious, especially when I'm thinking about targeting flounder. And I think Patrick brought up a really good point. Now we're coming into this high tide in the morning phase, which is always my favorite. Get a little moving water either side of that high slack tide is always seems to be really good for both trout and for flounder. Flounder especially, you know, get around any structure and you get that little bit of water movement seems to really turn them on. You know, we were fishing with the owners of Deadly Dudley a week or two ago.
That's right.
We kind of switched sides or switched from where we were fishing and walked over there, and I looked at you. I said, 1,000% there's a flounder here. And I threw the croaker slick out there, and in 2 seconds, there's a 17-inch flounder. I mean, it just looked floundery to me, you know what I mean? Seen it so many times when the conditions just really line up along the shorelines or along structure edge where you get that little bit of movement. You feel it. There's flounder sitting there waiting to ambush some food. Another thing I'm a real fan of, you know, if you don't want to go the pure scented bait route is the Procure. That stuff is really, really good. You know, it's kind of almost like there's too many different flavors of it on the market now. You got to kind of know which ones are good for what you're trying to target. Right. For flounder, I really like the Menhaden one's really good, the mullet, and they actually make a flounder pounder one, which is also really good. I've had a lot of success on that one. But that's one thing, you know, I really enjoy about land-based fishing is there's a lot of different areas that you can target the flounder and specks, you know, specks too, but more so with consistency, I feel like flounder is a great species to choose to try to target from land.
Yeah, man, the flatty patties have become a much bigger staple in my times down there on the island than they used to be. I really target them a lot now. And a lot of that has to do with getting to know you and spending more time with you and all the time that you spend on flounder and the flounder fishery and all the cool things I get to learn about them fishing with you. But they really are, man, very accessible on the land. And it's really cool how we can just go down there and sometimes really get on a good bite. And you did make a good point, avoiding or not avoiding, but you know, using something different than the scented plastics. You're able to pull out the Procure, and that's something that I've done a lot of recently as well, more so getting to know you. You've always said that the flounder really feed off of, you know, feeling and smell, and you definitely want that thing to stink, and that Procure sure does do it. Stuff reeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great option, like you said, with the high heat in the summertime. It's a good second option to have for the flounder. And, you know, the state of the flounder fishery itself has changed so much since 2019. I mean, it's really, really improved from everyone I talked to. You know, I was chatting with Richard at the rodeo, and he was saying that flounder have been trip savers for him in some cases this year. You know, he's able to, if the trout aren't cooperating or redfish or whatever, you know, he's been able to go find consistent flounder bites in places, which is, you know, who would have thought that flounder could be trip savers looking back at where we were, you know, in 2018, 2019. So it's really exciting to hear all that.
It is, man. It's so amazing what's been done for the flounders. Even that day, you mentioned the Deadly Dudley Day. That was somewhere around 12 days ago. You had to leave early, and me and Paul, we kept fishing and throwing the Deadly Dudleys around, and we ended up catching 18 trout and 3 flounder sitting right there on the north side of the island, pretty much fishing the same areas that we fished with you. Just it had to be midday and beating hot. That was when they wanted to eat.
Yep, it's crazy.
Well, Tanner, that's a good report, man. I appreciate you joining us this week.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Folks want to follow your shenanigans and everything online. Where do they need to look you up? Where do they need to find you? Man,
you guys can check me out on Instagram at Dolphin Island Fishing. Also on Facebook at Tanner Deas, Deas. And might see my face pop up on some YouTube channels, Captain Collier, Salty Swigs, Southern Salt Kayak Fishing. You guys can check those guys out and see all the shenanigans that I get involved with. But Dolphin Island Fishing is definitely my main staple, and the Facebook page as well.
Hey, Tanner, before we wrap up this segment, you got anything? You got any tips or anything to add for our listeners?
Yeah, man, I'd love to leave you guys with a tip. I kind of mentioned it earlier, flounder pounding and stuff like that. I know I lose a lot of jig heads. Recently, I've been throwing the iStrike Texas Eye jig head. It's just sort of a weedless style jig head that allows you to kind of bounce around those rocks and structures with a hidden hook and a lot of people or some people have said that, they've experienced issues with hook sets or whatever on these types of hooks, but I just haven't had a problem at all. I really like the eye strike fishing jig heads in general, but the Texas eye version has really been a game changer for me in the flounder game. I feel like it's really allowed me to get up tight on some structures and to really bounce into some rocks and allow that bait to sit there and not worry about it getting hung up. I'm losing my $2 jig head and worrying about having to tie on a new one and missing the bite and everything else. I've got this jig that, swims around those structures and through those structures really well. And I really like the big eyes on them, and I just really think they're a great jig. So if you guys want to check out the Texas eye jig head to avoid the old snags, I think it's a good idea.
That is, sounds like if it's working for you, it's probably going to work for some other folks.
That's right,
Yeah,
man. It's tried and true for me. So
I think that's a great tip, Tanner. That flounder fishing can get real expensive real quick, especially when you're fishing structures as hard as I like to fish them, and being able to roll across those rocks rather than kind of getting stuck in them. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you find those magnetic rocks, you know what I mean? The real sticky ones where there's just nothing you can do about it. You gotta learn that bow and arrow trick. That saved me a lot of money.
Getting out there, pulling.
But yeah, that's a great tip though, because those flounder especially, they will be right either on top of the structure or below it, kind of depending on what the tide's doing, but they're right there close to it. So the closer you are to it with your bait, the more bites you're going to get.
Absolutely. Well, Tanner, we appreciate you joining us this week, dude. As Butch likes to tell everybody, keep whacking them, buddy.
All right, Cap, you be good. Tight lines.
You guys take a quick break and check out a few of this week's great sponsors that bring you the fishing report for free each week. That segment was brought to you by Boater's List. Boater's List is your new reliable and fast resource designed to link everyone to everything on the water. If you own or run a boat, you know how difficult it can be to find the right company for the task at hand. Boater's List makes it easy to find the service that you are looking for. Locate anything from fuel docks to service repairs or rentals of large yachts, even down to paddle boards and all things in between. BoatersList.com will always strive to make it better on the water. And also brought to you by Killer Dock. As anglers, we put a lot of time, money, and passion into fishing, but most of us do not have a fish cleaning station that we are proud of. Many of us are suffering from dock dysfunction. A rotten table with rusty metal, this is just no good. But the dock enhancement that we've all been waiting for is finally here. Killer Dock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. Killer Dock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit killerdock.com to see more.
All right, Dylan, it's our turn to talk for a minute. So you got anything else to add about the rodeo, or anything y'all got new, maybe science related or fishing related? What you got on your mind?
Well, we had a upscale scientific effort this year. We sampled, a subsample of almost every single species that came into the rodeo. I think we sampled over 1,300 fish. I was doing my thing with the flounder. We were sampling the big female red snapper that came in for reproduction. We got a repro expert, Laya Munez, who's a PhD student in our lab, really, really smart, is working on looking at, how many eggs these big female snapper can produce. And the rodeo was just a really great way for her to get a bunch of those real big females kind of close to spawning. So that was really good. We sampled the grouper, the swordfish, the tuna. I mean, it was just an incredible year. And like I said earlier, the rodeo being a direct reflection of the current status of the fishery, I feel like personally it's been a banner year for speckled trout, basically all spring long for me. I've been catching really, really quality fish every time I seem to get out there, which has been, not always the case in years past for me. The flounder seemed to be really abundant, really big. The fish that won the 6.5 pounder was actually 25 inches long. That same fish in October could be 2 or 3 pounds heavier. And so that's a 25-inch flounder is a really, really big flounder. I saw that thing come across the table. My eyes were all big. I was in heaven because I get the otoliths and everything from all those fish. The flounder that actually won it last year was a 2-year-old. And so I'm kind of excited to see how that all has transitioned this year. It seemed like, a much more stronger year class was present this year with some bigger fish on the table, several 4-pounders, a lot of 3-pounders. So really, really exciting to see.
I've seen way more flounder this year than I have in probably 7 or 8 years, where like today, even we were throwing popping corks and caught 2, and I think we lost 2 flounder, but we boated 2 for sure. No, we boated 3. We had 1 short one, and but it's really encouraging. And then the fact that you said there was well over 100 brought in, I mean, from people that thought they may have had a potential winning fish is pretty impressive.
Right. Especially, this is probably especially true for flounder, but it takes, maybe only one thing to go wrong for the recruitment to be bad for a single year, but it takes a lot of things to go right to create a good recruiting class. And, a lot of different people are working really hard, especially when it comes to the flounder, from all different sides, from the hatchery to the state's decision to change the regulations and have the closure in November, and to what we're doing with the tagging to really learn a lot more about these fish's growth rates, their movements, their spawning migration. One thing that's actually really, really cool that I kind of just started on is assessing the possibility of offshore residency in these much older big females. So there's a spearfishing tournament that I sample in May, and the Southern Skin Diving team has actually collected these. They see these big female Southerns out there pretty much year round. And so they were able to bring me a couple, and these fish were actually much older than any flounder I've seen anywhere collected from inshore. And so we ran the microchemistry on those. Just a preliminary look at the data appears to be that these fish have remained offshore resident for a very long time. And so that may be something that we have here in Alabama, where, at some point these fish don't come back inshore, the larger, bigger females. I mean, it would kind of make sense to see that offshore. That's where the males are most of the time anyways. And so that would actually be potentially a really good thing, because you'd have a kind of what we call a cryptic biomass of spawning capable fish out there that could, successfully spawn every single year. And so that November closure is really, really important. And I've talked to, everybody from the gigging charter guides to the people that are the stakeholders that are really invested recreationally, and everybody still seems to be on board. They still want that November closure to be a thing and for the regulations to stick. I think everybody's really happy with the result of that. And I'm really, really excited about it as well.
Absolutely. And then like the Jubilees that have happened over on the east side, I haven't personally seen any of the Jubilees, but I've seen some videos of that reminded me of Jubilees that I saw back in the early 2000s and late 90s and stuff, where you would walk the beach and it would look like the entire beach was carpeted with baby flounder, just little juveniles, anywhere from just a couple inches long to maybe up to 5 or 6 inches long. And then with the occasional nicer quality, maybe keeper size flounder. And I saw several videos that have happened this year. So that tells me that not only do we have the fish that are large enough to keep, but we're starting to see a lot more of these small ones pushing back into the bay. Because I know a couple years ago that you'd go to these Jubilees and you wouldn't hardly see a single juvenile flounder. It was really scary in my eyes to see how little flounder there were out there, and it's amazing how things can turn around. You give Mother Nature a chance to rebound, and it looks like with the collective effort we're seeing that rebound happen. So pretty pumped about it. What else been happening down there around the rodeo? I mean, y'all had some big sharks come in, and what about the most unusual species?
Yeah, so I'll touch on all three of those. For the sharks, I think it was 12 or 13 sharks that were weighed in. I think the biggest was about 650 pounds. I think it was a tiger, but some really, really big tigers came in. And then also, Marcus said one of the biggest bull sharks he's ever seen came in. And he had to kind of do a double take at it to be like, is that really a bull shark? And so that was really, really cool. I think the general public was really ecstatic to see that. And I know he was, really thankful to be able to get those samples. And then the swordfish, I think that's, 14 swordfish that were weighed in, all from different anglers. So that's really, really exciting to see people having success with those fish. And, we kind of are getting ready to maybe get involved with some research for them. Our lab manager, Crystal Hightower, is looking at maybe getting some some tags for some of the sword fishermen that are catching, we'll catch some smaller ones sometime and want to let those go. And so that I'm really looking forward to those recapture reports to see the movement, not only the movements, but maybe some of the growth rates. Cause I think they're supposed to be one of the fastest growing fish out there. So we'll really see if that's true or not. Yeah. I think they grow really fast.
Like dolphin fast?
No, probably not dolphin fast, but, or tripletail fast. Tripletail are kind of ridiculous how fast they grow. But I'd have to really dig into it a little more before I answer that question with certainty. But I think it's going to be really, really cool. And we were taking the ear bones from all those to try to age them to try to find out actually moving forward.
I'm always interested by the most unusual fish that are brought in.
Right. Yeah. This year was kind of like a greatest hits album. I mean, it was like ones that we've only seen that may have won in previous years. We've only seen very few of them. I think we saw a Blackfin Snapper, which is it looks very similar to like a red snapper. It's actually more similar to a silk snapper. It looks just like a red snapper, but it has yellow eyes and black rings around its pectoral fins. That's a neat one. Saw a dogtooth snapper, an escalar, which is, if you ever go to a Japanese restaurant and you get white tuna, that's what that is. It's a deep water species. Really, it looks like a deep water king mackerel with a big eye. Really, really neat looking fish.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the picture of that fish.
There was a ginormous keeltail pomfret. If you ever deep water fishing out there, you might catch some of these pomfrets. The tunas love to feed on them, so do the swords. But this one was it was massive. So that was really cool to see. There was a spiny cheek scorpion fish that was just off a state record by like 2 ounces or so. The fish that won was the rough triggerfish. It's a pelagic triggerfish. We don't normally see very many pelagic triggerfish. I think we saw an ocean triggerfish last year, but it's a really, really pretty trigger. It was like black with blue highlight. Like it was just a real pretty fish. A lot of interesting stuff, but nothing that like just absolutely blew us away. It's more like a greatest hits album kind of thing. Just still really, really cool.
Absolutely. Well, when you get that many lines in the water, it's pretty interesting to see what does come in as the most unusual species. Anything else cool down there, science related?
Some really, really nice grouper. There were 3 Gag Grouper that came in, and so it's usually the dominant female in an area when she gets big enough will develop this certain coloration. It's called a copper belly gag. It's they're really, really pretty looking, but we got 3 really big gags come in. Saw some really nice yellow edge grouper come in. Scamp, same thing. I mean, it's incredible to see all these. Oh, and Tripletail was another one. I think the group that the people that placed first, second, and third all brought in the fish together, I want to say, and they were all over 30 pounds. I'm like, where the heck did y'all get these things from? I mean, those are monster Tripletail. You see those in person, like a freaking dinosaur.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool. And just to see all the different species, really quality of all the different species, just is such a reflection of the incredible fishery we have here off the coast. And really just thankful to be a part of it. It's really special, and a lot of nice lunker trout too, or the over 26 trouts that came in. I think for the live weigh-in was really successful this year too. I think we had 152 fish tagged and released there at the live weigh-in. We had anglers recapture about 10 trout and redfish and tripletail during the rodeo too. I think a couple of them were year tags actually.
Cool.
A couple of my flounder were recaptured. That was pretty neat because I hadn't had too many of those from this year for whatever reason. Be recap.
Good stuff, man. I've been fishing a little bit from like I said on the earlier in the show where Autumn, my wife, and we fished the rodeo together, and on Friday we started out on the causeway. We were doing some red fishing and stuff up there, and actually caught a couple of nice trout. Nothing was put us in any kind of money, but we were pleasantly surprised by a couple of nice trout up there, and actually did not catch any redfish. Plenty of damn hardhead catfish were up there. We just kind of worked our way down the bay, very similar to what I did with Cooper the weekend before, and just kind of hitting different spots and trying different things for different species. And we caught a few more trout on the way down and caught a couple sheephead. I caught one that I thought was going to be good enough to to make the board. It ended up being good enough for fourth place. So first place out of the money. And then we worked our way all the way out into the Gulf, had a really good red snapper bite. I dropped down and caught a couple of 18 inchers. Autumn drops down and she caught one like 15 pounds. And I was like, daggum, I don't know that I want to, if I'm going to go to the scale with a red snapper, felt a little insecure. My wife carrying one that was 15 pounds and I had like a 3-pounder. So I dropped down a few more times and ended up having me one about 15 pounds. And then we were working our way back in and swung by a shrimp boat to see if anything was around it, and found it had this big giant school of bonita, and started catching bonita right out. And I was fishing with a live croaker and they wouldn't touch it. And they were swarming all around the boat. She put a dead shrimp on a popping cork, which was undermatched for the size bonita they were. And they broke the line pretty quick. But so then we were putting dead shrimp on a like a 6-aught circle hook like I use for snapper fishing, and just was free lining that thing down. And man, they were smoking it every time. But we were not in the rodeo winning class of fish. These were all like 9 to, I think the biggest one Autumn caught was 11 pounds. But man, it was a fun experience catching those fish, and it's something that it kind of brought me back to being a kid whenever I used to beg my dad to take me out in the Gulf, because I just wanted to catch stuff that would just pull drag like crazy, like catching big Spanish and kings and bonita and stuff. So, but anyway, we messed around with jacks and all this stuff. And over the course of the weekend, had a pretty good weekend, also caught redfish and big sail cats, and entered a lot of different fish species, and fell short on everything except for found me a 3rd place jack to land on the board. So first time I've weighed in jacks in the rodeo before, and it always seemed like I always weighed in like the 27, 28 pounder, and then you have the 29s and 30s and possibly even 31s get weighed in. And a 28 looks tiny when you start pushing it down the list with all these 29s and 30s. And fortunately this year there weren't any 30s. That pushed me off the board. And then outside of that, this time of the year, I take advantage of all the different species out there. I try to have a lot of different live bait, pogies and croakers and live shrimp. We actually had some fiddler crabs that were productive for us today. But just about any type of live bait you can get your hands on, and especially fishing around structure, rocks and jetties and gas rigs and the range markers in the bay and the lighthouse and all this stuff, big structures in the bay, man, there's just so much life around there. And having a lot of different bait types, you give yourself a good opportunity to catch a lot of different fish and have a really good time out there fishing. That generally is the theme from now till early October. A lot of fish available, a lot of different types of fish, and really, in my opinion, if you turn your nose up at the type of fishing that we have this time of the year, shame on you. It's there's a lot of time of the year when you can go and specifically target speckled trout and specifically target redfish and really have isolated days to that. But this time of year is really a blast for me and my customers. So
that's extremely well said there. I mean, we're super lucky to have that type of fishery here. I mean, you can literally go out and catch 10 or 12 different species that are all quality, some of which are really, really high quality table fish and stuff like that. And then, you throw in a world-class sport fish like the jack crevalle in there to tug on your drag, or you might get, bull reds on Dixie bar or the slot reds. You can catch some big trout, big Spanish, bonita, might get you a black drum, sheep's head, tripletail. I mean, there's so much that you could do. You can't fit it all into the day. I wish I had the time to fish almost every single day this time of year. And we're coming up on one of my favorite times of year, mainly because I get a little bit more free time to be able to take advantage of the opportunity to fish. But, the Gulf should be starting to really slick out as we get into August, get that real high heat, land breeze effect where, it's a little bit of light north wind in the morning. The land heats up, it switches around to the south, so it kind of cancels out for a little while, and then you can ride it back in. Just one of my favorite overall times of the year. And then as we get closer to October, that flounder bite's really going to start heating up, and all those flounders should start coming out of the woodworks. I mean, if you think it's good now, just wait. I mean, that's kind of how it's been for us in years past. And then trout fishing seems to be on fire. Everybody seems to be finding big fish here and there. I mean, from what Tanner said, that's a good problem to have if you can't find fish in this lot. Maybe it's not a good problem to have on tournament day, but just for the fun of the fishing is it's really good to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Those are some of the most fun speckled trout to catch. That 22 to 26 inch size fish, man. They're special fish. They fight hard. That's a lot of times with customers when we go out and we're trying to target speckled trout that are within that slot. If they say they want to keep some fish or whatever, and then all of a sudden somebody catches, say, like a redfish, like a 25, 26 inch redfish, and it pulls drag and makes a circle around the boat and everything. And then everybody's like, man, I want to catch one of them. And it's all because of the fight. It's not, you can say, no, we're going to throw all these back, and everybody's attitude generally changes. It's like, well, if we don't catch anything else to put in the box, if we can keep catching those, man, that would be awesome. The fight is generally the excitement around my boat anyway.
Oh yeah, and you're dialed into those bull reds. I know you know how to put your customers on those. I get to see the pictures and the tags.
And the jacks this time of the year too. We actually did a little jack fishing today. I had a guy that's booked with me several times named Bart. Bart brought a couple of high school kids down to fish with him, and one of them had never fished saltwater before, and we had made a couple stops and caught a few like small little rat reds. And I think the young man I'm talking about that hadn't been in saltwater, he didn't catch anything at that first stop. And then I asked Bart, I said, hey, so we think about going and catching some jacks. He's like, you think so? I said, yeah, well, I think we got a shot at it. So we went and found us a shrimp boat that had some jacks on it. And man, those boys were like, that was the best thing of their fishing life was the tussle with a jack and fight that thing. Man, they had such a blast doing that. They were like, man, if we don't do anything else, this day is made for me. So
yeah,
anyway.
I mean, they're just such a cool fish. I mean, people pay big money and travel long distances just to go catch the trevallies. And that's what a jack crevalle is. I mean, you will not find a better fighting fish, a better performance from a fish during a fight than you will from a jack crevalle. Mm-hmm. I kind of have a goal. I caught a small one, actually. I hadn't really seen a small one. I mean, like maybe a 23, 24 inch jack on a slick lure a couple weeks ago. And that was a blast because I was running the slick by a PVC pole, and I got smacked and it started running. I was like, I wonder if this is a tripletail or something. Like, what could this be? It's not a redfish. It's not a trout. So you're questioning it the whole fight. I mean, it was just a blast. And then see a jack come up. Super cool fish. We're actually going to be trying to stick some acoustic tags in them here in a little while. See if we can track them around, see if we can learn more about them.
That'll be cool for sure.
I think it'd be really cool, while we have that gate in place throughout Mobile Bay to track the flounder. I mean, you can see movement in and out of the bay and in and out of the bay into the Gulf, as well as in and out of the Mississippi Sound in the bay. So hopefully they'll get picked up. So the girl that's heading that up is based down in Florida, and she's tagging some there. And apparently that they'll come from Florida to here and vice versa. And so we don't really fully understand the connectivity across the Gulf of Mexico. And the same thing with the bull reds. I think we're going to try to get some tags and some bull reds this fall. The ones that are kind of, more coastal, and see if what kind of connectivity there is between the Gulf states and other areas in the northern Gulf of Mexico, and see if we can learn something about them.
Man, that's awesome. I love all the science and all the tagging stuff that y'all are getting out there, man. It's, learning a little bit more each day. And the main thing is these little studies that y'all do, that once they grow legs, they can start helping with the management of the different fish. So, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, even now, I would say hearing people talk about the good old days 50s, 60s, even earlier, they talk about, well, we always went fishing in the ocean or in the Gulf or whatever because it's like an endless supply of fish. And it's, just because there's not fences out there or you're not landlocked like a pond, there is only a certain amount of fish that can inhabit an area. So once we have a better understanding of the different species and having a better attack at how to manage them is going to be, critical for us to continue to have these talks about, all these different fish types that we get to catch every year. So appreciate what you're doing, Dylan.
Right. Thanks, man. It's something that I'm just really, really passionate about. I mean, fisheries are a renewable resource, and each it's very species specific, right? For the rate at which they renew. In a perfect world, we're able to manage fisheries on a scale that allow people to go out and harvest fish to their needs, to meet their needs, and at the same time keeping the population at the same level, but ideally in a state of growth. And that's something that I really think that the tagging program helps a lot with, and promoting that release over 20 mentality and stuff like that. And it kind of you hate to release a big fish when you think that that's just it. You let the fish go and that's it. But when you can stick a tag in it and know that if that fish ever gets recaptured, that you get to know about it. And you get to learn more about it. And, it kind of blows people's minds sometimes to see the growth rates of all the different species. Trout are not, they don't grow as fast as we'd like them to. A 30-inch trout, maybe 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And so for a speckled trout to survive that long, and for, that's why it's so special when you hear someone catch one of those big trout and kind of learning more from the movements too. It's only a snapshot in time. It's a little different than like acoustic tagging data where you can see more information in real time about the movements, but still to get those recaptures and even to get multiple recaptures, if the angler decides to let the fish go again, I think some of those recaptures are just so cool. And then the redfish ones too, every now and then we'll see the redfish either crazily stay in the same spot for years at a time, or then some of them will just book it over to Navarre Beach or Lake Pontchartrain or something crazy. We had couple speckled trout this spring that were tagged on Point Clear that were recapped in the Chandeleur Islands. I mean, just every now and then you see something crazy, and those are my favorites always.
Oh, absolutely. Those outliers and what it does is it just tells you like, we're so far away from really knowing a full story. The more, just think of how many fish that you would have to acoustically tag out of all the spaghetti tags that we put out, and only a couple of these go to Chandelier. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of acoustical tags that you'd have to put out to get lucky enough to have that one fish make that route and learn more about how it went from point A to point B. But the spaghetti tags do help. It starts helping us have a little bit of idea and gives us hope on on how to manage this stuff.
Right. And I've been really impressed at how well the tagging program has grown, and the, interest that I get from a lot of different anglers and people who recap fish who ask me, I want to be involved in the tagging program, and how we've been able to help it grow and looking to add maybe some more species. Hopefully, one of my goals is to get flounder added at some point before I finish up. I have a lot of interest from people on that respect. And, getting the Tripletail incorporated. The Tripletail is actually a different tagging effort that we had at the Sea Lab, which has now been added directly into the Tag Alabama program. So the orange tags can now be used to tag speckled trout, redfish, and Tripletail. And then we've got specific tags for tarpon, maybe looking at getting some for swordfish, and, who knows what's next on that list. I think sheep's head would be a really, really interesting one. I know you'd probably agree with that, just to kind of see, because that's something, I really admire that about you. Your ability to target the sheep's head year round, because that's a tricky fish, really. During the spawn, it seems like it can be easy sometimes, and there's a lot of fish out there. But then once that's done, I mean, to really target big sheep's head at a high level every day is something that's really admirable.
Well, I appreciate it. I've always enjoyed those fish, and the ones that are sometimes the things in fishing that are most difficult are the ones that I strive hardest to try to achieve. So, and the sheephead is one of those that has always had a soft spot in my heart. Always enjoyed it doing it as a kid and love doing it as a guide now. All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. Y'all take a minute to check out a few of these great sponsors.
That segment was brought to you by MB Ranch King. MB Ranch King hunting blinds and feeders are built to last, right here in the USA. With durability and convenience in mind, MB Ranch King's maintenance-free blinds are constructed with high-grade steel and come in a variety of sizes to meet any hunter's needs. They offer high-quality, easy-to-use corn and protein feeders that can be filled with both feet on the ground. Call Kevin today for more info or a quote at 205-807-2937. MB Ranch King, built in the pursuit of perfection. And also brought to you by Bucks Island. They have new pontoon boats, bass boats, bow riders, and aluminum boats for sale. They provide boat service on all kinds of boats, even if they weren't purchased from Bucks. Visit them at 4500 Highway 77 in Southside, Alabama, or give them a call at 256-442-2588.
Well, Dylan, we better wrap this thing up. Before we shut this show down, we need to do What Did You Learn? So what did you learn this week, Dylan?
One thing that really stood out to me was something King said about taking other people, what people might consider as a disadvantage from the condition and turning it into an advantage for yourself. I think that is something that I think we could all probably do a little bit better on and really think about hard. If the wind's really blowing or the tide's moving too quickly, like what can I do to use that to my advantage and put fish in the boat? I thought was a really, really good tip. And then the tip we got from Tanner as well, I thought was really good about coming up with a gear type, specifically in that case, the jig head, to be able to work structures that would be more difficult with just your standard jig head to try to get those bites and work areas that might hold fish but are tricky to fish.
Well, I don't have anything to add because those were the tips that stood. I mean, that really stood out to me when he said he paid attention to where his drift was and figured out a ridge that he could just set up and drift and make life easy on them. And and the thing is with bait fishing, many people that don't use a lot of natural bait, whether it be live or dead bait, they think that just because you put this natural bait on a hook and throw it in the water, that something's going to eat it. And there's so many times where having the hook in the proper spot on that live bait, or having the weight in the proper spot above that bait or below that bait, or however you need to rig it to properly present that live or natural bait. And what King did there was he found a ridge. He was able to position his baits the right way, drift down that ridge, and slayed the fish. And all while actually being easier on himself because he was using that current to help him. And he said he was just bumping in and out of gear just a little bit at a time and drifting the ridge, catching fish just about the whole way. So, yep, that was my takeaway as well.
Sometimes you got to match the hatch, and sometimes it's impossible to match the hatch when they're keyed in on those glass minnows. I've seen that happen a lot of times, and it can be difficult. Sometimes there literally can be too much bait in the water, and those fish are just happy as can be, chewing away on all those, and there's nothing that you can present them. I pride myself on doing a lot of artificial fishing, but sometimes, you really got to switch it up and get to that live bait, get it presented well to be able to get those bites. I think that's a great point.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up another great segment. Let's take a quick break to check out a few of this week's great sponsors.
That segment was brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metal Works are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. They offer 20 Sherwin-Williams colors to choose from and have a 40-year warranty. Baker Metal and Dixie Supply, 2 names, same great service. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metal Works, your metal roofing headquarters. And also brought to you by National Land Realty.
If you're in the market to sell your land, check out the fastest growing, most innovative land brokerage in the country. With the largest online presence in the industry, the bottom line is when you market your land through National Land Realty, the right buyers will know your land is for sale. Contact your Emerald Coast National Land agent. That's me, Joe Baya, at jbaya@nationalland.com, or call me at 850-296-7098.
All right, Dylan. Well, that's going to wrap it up. You got anything else you want to add before we sound off?
No, just excited to hear what Butch finds out at the iCast. That's such a cool event. I see little social media posts and stuff about it, and all those companies come and present their new rods and reels and lures that are coming out. So always excited.
It is really an unbelievable type experience as a fisherman. If you ever get a chance to go, I would encourage anybody that's a fisherman that has the opportunity to go down there for a day or two or even 3 or whatever. Overwhelming is about the best way to describe it, because there's just so many booths and so many different fishing items and things out there that I'm usually like out of breath, dehydrated, back sore, feet wore out. It's like, and all of that happens like by seeing half of the show, and then you got to go back the second day to see the other half of the show. But it's impressive. But yep, I'm sure Butch will come back with some toys and some stories, and probably maybe sneak a few more sponsors on the podcast for us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what all the information he brings back, and looking forward to next week's show. I really appreciate the opportunity to co-host this one with you. It was fun.
All right, dude. Well, thank you for joining me, and that's going to wrap it up.
Until next time, tied lines.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 to get the 10% off AFCO promo code, and also to be added to our email list, and we'll send you the new show each week. You guys keep whacking them and stay safe out there.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Sam's Stop and Shop. Sam's Stop and Shop is your one-stop shop located at 27122 Canal Road in Orange Beach. Sam's has a little bit of everything, including a deli, inshore, offshore, and surf fishing tackle. They also have bait, clothing, groceries, name brand sunglasses, and so much more. Stop by and shop or call them at 251-981-4245 today. And also brought to you by Admiral Shellfish. Admiral oysters are available by the dozen at Bon Secour Fisheries, Inc. in Bon Secour, Alabama. From a simple, nutrient-dense appetizer at home or a shucking party with friends, Admiral oysters will steal the show. Call 251-949-7411 for pricing and availability. Follow their adventures on Instagram at Admiral Shellfish Co. And also brought to you by Bahio Sunglasses. See more, catch more. Experience the clearest lenses on the planet with Bahio Sunglasses. Try on a pair at your local retailer or check out BahioSunglasses.com to see for yourself. And also, Photonis Defense, simply the best in-class night vision systems ever built. Contact them at PhotonisDefense.com to learn more. Photonis Defense, Masters of Darkness. And also brought to you by United Bank. United Bank supports our farmers with financial products and services designed specifically for agribusiness. All loans subject to credit approval, equal housing opportunity lender, member FDIC. And also brought to you by L&M Marine. L&M Marine has something for everyone, from small hunting boats, pontoons, as well as bigger bay hybrid boats for the hardcore angler. Go visit them at 34600 Highway 59 in Stapleton, Alabama, or call 251-937-1380. Also brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Did you know you could save up to 40% on your homeowner's insurance with a fortified roof? Learn more at fortifiedroofingpros.com or call them at 251-973-9999. And also, Richardoni Family Dentistry. You're going to need a good dentist, so you may as well make an appointment with fellow angler Josh Richardoni. Call today to book an appointment at 251-342-6672. And also, CCA Alabama. Catch a tagged redfish this summer and win a 2022 Nautic Star 215 bay boat in the inaugural CCA Alabama Star Tournament. Sign up now at joincca.org/star tournament. AFTCO, family owned and operated AFTCO fishing apparel and tackle are designed to handle the harshest elements and help you weather any day on the water. From cold tournament mornings to the humid summers of Florida, their products are built to handle the extreme. They are proud to hear customer stories about the 20-plus years of life cycle of their AFTCO products. Visit aftco.com, that's AFTCO.com, for on-the-water performance gear. And also brought to you by the Alabama Marine Resources Division. The Alabama Marine Resources Division reminds all recreational anglers that gray triggerfish, greater amberjack, or red snapper must be reported through Snapper Check prior to landing the fish in Alabama. For more information about Snapper Check, please visit outdooralabama.com.